I never meant to come to Spain. Not like this anyway. Back in Seattle I pictured it as some romantic escape. White sand beaches in Costa del Sol, glasses of chilled fino under olive trees, a chance to rewrite the chapters of my life that had gone all wrong. At 28, with my architecture degree gathering dust, and a string of failed relationships trailing behind me like bad karma, I figured why not? Sell the condo, pack a bag and chase the sun. What I got instead was a crumbling finca in a dusty corner of West Andalusia, inherited from an aunt I barely knew, a woman who'd fled America in the 70s for reasons she never shared in her stiff Christmas cards. The place was a fixer-upper in every sense. Peeling stucco walls, a garden choked with weeds, and a view of jagged hills that whispered secrets in the wind. But secrets have a way of biting back. On my third day there, as I wrestled with a rusted gate that wouldn't budge, she appeared. Isabella. Like she'd stepped out of a Lorca poem. All fire and shadow. She was 32 or so, the town gossips later told me, with skin like burnished copper and eyes that could pin you to the spot. Deep brown flecked with gold, the kind that made you feel seen and stripped bare in the same breath. Her hair fell in a straight inky cascade down her back, and she moved with the easy grace of someone who'd grown up dancing flamenco in hidden cellars. She wore a simple linen dress that day, faded red against the golden afternoon light, and carried a basket of figs from her family's orchard next door. "¿Qué haces aquí?" she demanded, her voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "What are you doing here?" Her English was flawless, honed from years waitressing for American tourists in Seville, but laced with that Andalusian lilt that turned every word into a challenge. I straightened up, wiping sweat from my brow, my curly dark hair already frizzing in the heat. At 5'7", with the lean build of someone who hiked the Cascades for therapy, I wasn't used to feeling small. But she loomed in the gateway, arms crossed, her full lips pressed into a line that said she'd already judged me and found me wanting. "I'm Isabel," I said, forcing a smile that felt like grit in my teeth. "This is my property now. Aunt Lydia's will and all." Her laugh was sharp, a bark that echoed off the stone walls. "Lydia's? That old gringa who squatted here for decades? This land's been in my family since the Moors. You think a piece of paper from America changes that?" She stepped closer, close enough that I caught the scent of jasmine and sun-warmed earth on her skin. It was disarming, that closeness, intimate in a way that made my pulse stutter. But her eyes narrowed, and any flicker of something softer vanished. "We've got lawyers. You'll be gone by harvest." Hatred bloomed in me like a desert flower after a flash flood. Sudden, thorny, impossible to ignore. Who was she to swoop in and claim my fresh start? I'd crossed an ocean for this, left behind the gray rains of home and the ghost of my ex's betrayal, Claire, who cheated with my best friend and left me picking up the shards. Spain was supposed to be my redemption, not another battlefield. "Try me," I shot back, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I've got deeds, surveys, the works. This finca is mine." She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head, studying me like I was a stubborn mule she might break. "Americans," she muttered, shaking her head. "Always thinking you can buy your way into paradise." With that, she turned on her heel, the basket swinging from her arm, and strode back to the neighboring grove. I watched her go, the sway of her hips against the dusty path, and felt a dangerous spark ignite low in my belly. Attraction? No. It had to be anger. Pure righteous anger. The weeks that followed were a war of attrition. Isabella's family, the Ruiz clan, olive farmers with roots deeper than the ancient aquifers, filed claims faster than I could say notario. Surveyors tramped through my yard. Neighbors whispered over fences about the Yankee invasora. And every morning, I'd find my gate chained with a new lock, courtesy of her. I'd retaliate in small ways, trimming the shared hedge so aggressively that branches rained into their yard, blasting Patsy Cline at dawn to drown out their roosters. But beneath the pettiness there was something else. A pull, magnetic and unwelcome. I'd catch glimpses of her through the fence, laughing with her abuela in the shade of a fig tree, her hands stained purple from the fruit, or bending to tend the irrigation ditches, her dress hiking up just enough to reveal the curve of her calf, strong and sun-kissed. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the hills in hues of ochre and rose, I found her at my door again. Not with papers this time, but a bottle of manzanilla and 2 glasses. Her hair was loose, catching the light like silk, and her expression was softer, wary at least. Truce, she said, holding out the bottle. My cousin's a judge in Malaga. He says your claim holds water. For now. I hesitated, the weight of the day pressing on me. The latest email from my Seattle lawyer, confirming the win but warning of appeals. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to let the hatred fester like an open wound. But another part, the lonely part that had stared at four walls too many nights, cracked open. Fine, I said, stepping aside. But if this is poison, I'll haunt you. She laughed then, a real one, warm, throaty, the sound wrapping around me like a shawl. We sat on the sagging porch steps, the wine sharp and cool on our tongues, and talked. Not about the land, not at first. She told me about growing up in the shadow of Franco's ghost. Her mother's stories of gypsy dances banned under the regime. I shared bits of Seattle. The endless drizzle, the coffee shops where dreams went to caffeinate. Her eyes lit up when I described sketching skyscrapers as a kid. And for a moment, the fence between us felt invisible. You're not what I expected, she admitted, swirling the dregs in her glass. Her knee brushed mine, accidental but electric, sending a jolt up my spine. I pulled back, heat flooding my cheeks. Was this flirting? God, I hoped not. Claire had left me gun-shy, convinced every spark was a setup for heartbreak. Neither are you, I replied, but my voice came out huskier than intended. We finished the bottle in companionable silence, the stars wheeling overhead like fireflies in the velvet dark. When she stood to leave, her hand lingered on my shoulder, a touch that burned through my shirt. Buenas noches, Isabel, she murmured, her breath warm against my ear. That night I lay awake, the ceiling fan stirring ghosts of her scent. Hatred. It was cracking, fissures running through like veins of golden quartz. But I didn't know yet how deep those cracks would go. The truce held, fragile as spun sugar. We started sharing tools over the fence, her pruning shears for my hammer, and soon meals. She'd bring paella simmered with saffron from her uncle's threads. I'd counter with apple pie baked in a finca oven that smoked like a chimney. Conversation stretched into the wee hours. Her dreams of opening a gallery in Granada, showcasing local artists crushed by tourism's boot. My sketches of rebuilding the town square into a community hub, green spaces where kids could play without fear of the old world's grudges. Isabella was a force, passionate, unyielding, with a laugh that could coax blooms from stone. But there were shadows too. She'd go quiet when talk turned to family, her fingers tracing scars on her wrist from a childhood fall she never detailed. And me? I was still running from Claire's ghost, from the architecture firm that had sidelined me for being too emotional. In Isabella I saw a mirror. Two women piecing themselves together from broken clay. One afternoon, as thunderheads gathered over the Sierra, we hiked the hills behind the finca. The air hummed with the promise of rain, wild thyme crushing under our boots. She led me to a hidden grove, a circle of cork oaks where her grandfather had proposed to her grandmother under a blood moon. This is where love lives, she said, spreading a blanket and unpacking chorizo and cheese. We ate cross-legged, shoulders touching, the world narrowing to the space between us. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was the way her eyes held mine, soft and searching, or the brush of her fingers as she handed me a grape. But suddenly her lips were on mine, tentative at first, then hungry, tasting of salt and sweetness. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer, the world tilting on its axis. It was like coming home after years adrift, her body fitting against mine, curves yielding and strong, her sigh vibrating through me like a chord struck true. We broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together. Isabel, she whispered, her voice trembling. I've wanted this since the day you fought me at that gate. Me too, I confessed, the words tumbling out. Even when I hated you. God, especially then. We kissed again, slower this time, exploring the map of each other's mouths. Her hands tangled in my curls, mine traced the line of her spine through her blouse. It was fire and flood, passion tempered by the tenderness we'd earned through barbs and banter. As rain began to patter through the leaves, we laughed, breathless, alive, and ran back to the finca, hand in hand, soaked and shining. That was the beginning. Or so I thought. Love in Spain felt like a bullfight. Exhilarating, dangerous, every step a dance with destiny. We stole moments in the olive groves, her laughter echoing as I traced constellations on her skin under starlit skies. She taught me to sway to Belarius on her family's patio, my 2 left feet stumbling into her arms. I showed her my sketches, vulnerable lines that dreamed of bridges between worlds. Much like us. But paradise has its serpents. Whispers started in the village. Isabella's engagement to Diego, the blacksmith's son. A match arranged since childhood to save the family farm from debt. I laughed it off at first, old-world nonsense, she'd say. Until the night I saw the ring. It was a Sunday mercado in Ronda, the air thick with the sizzle of churros and the haggling cries of vendors. Isabella and I had slipped away from the finca early, her hand in mine as we wove through stalls piled high with ceramics and spices. She'd been distant that week, snappish over small things, like the way I left my boots by the door or questioned her late nights at the orchard. Family business, she'd mutter, avoiding my eyes. I chalked it up to the land dispute dragging on. Her cousin's appeal had hit a snag, and tensions with her parents simmered like a pot left too long on the flame. We paused at a jeweler's booth, where an old man with gnarled hands displayed silver filigree that caught the light like captured stars. Isabella's gaze lingered on a band, simple, etched with olive leaves, and before I could comment, she slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, hugging the curve like it belonged. "What's that?" I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. The market noise faded, the world sharpening to that glint of metal. She glanced down, then up at me, her brown eyes shadowed. "Nothing. Just trying it on." But her voice cracked, and she pulled it off too quickly, handing it back with a forced smile. "Come on, let's find those almonds you like." I followed, but the seed of doubt had taken root, burrowing deep. That night, as we lay tangled in my bed, sheets rumpled from lovemaking that felt more like clinging than celebrating, I couldn't hold it in. The rain had returned, a steady drum against the shutters, mirroring the storm in my chest. "Isabella," I said, propping on an elbow to trace her jaw. She was beautiful in repose, lashes fanned against her cheeks, lips parted in sleep's gentle surrender. "Tell me about Diego." Her eyes flew open, alert as a deer's in headlights. "What?" "The engagement. The village talks. Is it real?" My heart hammered, each beat a plea and a plea bargain. She sat up, pulling the sheet around her like armor. The room smelled of us, of sweat and jasmine and the faint metallic tang of fear. "It's complicated, Isabel. My family. They're drowning in debt. The olives failed last season, drought, you know? Diego's shop brings steady money. It's not love, it's survival." "But the ring?" I pressed, my voice rising despite myself. "You tried it on like it was yours already." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I was a kid when they promised me to him. A way to bind the families. I said no 100 times, but Abuela's sick, and Papa's pride." Tears welled, spilling over. She dashed them away fierce. "I don't want him. I want you. This." She gestured between us, her hand trembling. I pulled her close, murmuring apologies into her hair. But the fracture was there. Hairline at first, but spreading. We made love again that night, desperate and devouring, as if bodies could seal the cracks. Her touches were reverent, mapping me like sacred ground. Mine urgent, claiming what I feared losing. In the afterglow, she whispered promises. "I'll end it. Tomorrow. We'll figure this out together." I believed her. God, how I believed her. The next days blurred into a haze of stolen bliss. We'd meet at dawn in the groves, her lips tasting of dew-kissed figs, my fingers weaving through her hair as we planned a future. Me designing eco-lodges for the finca, her curating art that told their stories. Hatred had melted into this molten thing. Love that burned bright and blinding. Then came the betrayal. It was Isabella's birthday. A crisp October eve when the air turned sweet with the scent of ripening pomegranates. She'd insisted on a quiet dinner at her family's hacienda. "One last time to soften the blow," she'd said with a wry smile. I arrived with a cake I'd baked from scratch, lopsided but laced with vanilla from Seattle, and a necklace of turquoise beads that matched her eyes. The hacienda was a sprawl of whitewashed walls and wrought iron balconies, lanterns flickering like fireflies in the courtyard. Her family greeted me warily, her father broad-shouldered and silent, with a mustache like a broom, her mother sharp-eyed and bustling with trays of tapas, Abuela frail in her rocker clutching a rosary. Isabella was radiant in a black dress that hugged her curves, her hair pinned with jasmine blooms. She pulled me aside in the kitchen. kissing me fiercely against the tiled wall. Thank you for being here. For us. Dinner unfolded under a canopy of stars, the table groaning with gazpacho and jamon sliced paper thin. Laughter flowed freer than the Rioja stories tumbling out. Abuela's tales of smuggling art during the Civil War, my awkward attempts at Castilian proverbs that had everyone in stitches. Even her father cracked a smile when I sketched a quick caricature of him as a matador. Isabella's hand found mine under the table, squeezing, our secret anchor. But as the night deepened, Diego arrived. Unannounced, striding in like he owned the shadows. He was built like the forge he tended. Tall, muscled, with ink-black hair and a jaw carved from granite. In his late 30s he carried the weight of tradition like a crown, proud, unyielding. Feliz cumpleaños, mi amor, he said, kissing Isabella's cheeks with a familiarity that curdled my blood. He placed a gift in her lap. A leather-bound album of photos, their childhoods chronicled in faded Polaroids. Her on his shoulders at the feria. Them dancing at quinceañeras, promises etched in innocent smiles. The table hushed. Isabella's face paled, her fingers white-knuckling the album. Diego, she started, but he waved her off, turning to me with a nod that felt like a gauntlet thrown. Isabel, right? The American. Heard about your little dispute. His English was accented, clipped. But family's family. Isabella knows that. I forced a smile, my throat tight. Sure. Family first. The evening fractured after that. Polite toasts gave way to strained silences, Abuela's eyes darting between us like she sensed the fault lines. Isabella excused herself early, claiming a headache, and I followed soon after, the cake untouched on the sideboard. Outside under the olive trees she was waiting, pacing, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she choked out, falling into my arms. I told him months ago. But he won't let go. Says it's for the family, for honor. Then fight, I urged, cupping her face. We fight together. She nodded, fierce but doubt flickered in her eyes. A storm cloud on the horizon. We drove back to the finca in silence, the road winding like a vein through the dark. That night, she slept fitfully beside me, murmuring apologies in her dreams. I held her, whispering back, but sleep evaded me. Betrayal wasn't just his. It was the world's, pressing in with its ancient weights. The conflicts escalated like a gathering tempest. Diego's visits turned possessive, dropping by the hacienda uninvited, helping with the harvest while eyeing me like an interloper. Isabella wavered, torn between the love we'd forged and the loyalty carved into her bones. Arguments erupted. Me accusing her of cowardice, her snapping that I couldn't understand the pull of blood and soil. You run from your past, she'd hurl. But mine's rooted here. I can't just uproot it. One night, after a particularly vicious row, plates shattering against the wall, words like shrapnel, I stormed out into the rain-lashed yard. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the fence that had started it all. I sank to my knees in the mud, sobs racking me. Hatred had twisted into heartbreak, a vice around my ribs. How had we gone from enemies to this? From fire to ash? She found me there, drenched and shivering. Isabel, she said, dropping beside me, her dress soaking through. Don't leave me to this alone. But I was already fracturing. I can't be your secret anymore, I whispered. Choose, Isabella. Us or them. She chose silence that night, and in the morning she was gone, back to the hacienda to talk sense into her family. Days stretched into a week of radio silence, my phone a dead weight, the finca echoing with absence. I threw myself into work, sketching renovations that now felt futile, hammering nails until my hands blistered. The village watched, whispers turning to pitying glances. Pobre Yankee, they'd murmur. Poor Yankee. Then the climax crashed down like a Sierra storm. It was a market day in town, the plaza alive with brass bands and flower sellers. I'd gone for supplies, paint for the walls, hope for my heart when I saw them. Isabella and Diego, arm in arm, her head on his shoulder as they bartered for lemons. She looked exhausted, hollowed out, but the ring was back on her finger, the one from the jeweler's stall. It gleamed like a shackle. Rage propelled me forward. I shoved through the crowd, my voice slicing the din. Isabella. Heads turned. She froze, color draining from her face. Diego's arm tightened around her, protective or possessive. Isabel, not here. she pleaded, eyes wide with panic. But I was beyond reason. You lied. All of it, the promises, the U.S. Was I just a rebellion? A way to spite the dutiful daughter? Words poured out, raw and ragged, drawing gasps from the onlookers. An old woman crossed herself. A child tugged his mother's skirt. Diego stepped forward, voice low thunder. Enough. She's made her choice. Isabella wrenched free, tears streaming. No. It's not Papa forced it. The debt, the land. They threatened to disown me if I didn't. Marry him. I laughed, bitter as bile. And you let them. After everything. She reached for me, but I recoiled. The crowd murmured, a tide of judgment. In that moment, under the merciless sun, I saw it all. The hatred reborn, sharper for having tasted love. Goodbye, Isabella, I said, turning away. Each step cracked something irreparable inside me. Back at the finca, I packed blindly. Sketches crumpled, clothes shoved into a duffel. Spain had been a dream turned nightmare. Time to wake up. As dusk fell, painting the hills in bruised purples, a knock echoed, tentative, broken. I opened the door to her. Disheveled, mud-streaked, the ring discarded in the dirt at her feet. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then sheeting down. I chose you, she gasped, collapsing against the frame. I told them everything. Walked out. For us. Heartbreak warred with hope, the storm mirroring my soul. I pulled her inside, our bodies colliding in a tangle of wet limbs and whispered vows. But trust, once shattered, doesn't mend clean. We clung through the night, but the fractures lingered. Shadows in our lovemaking, hesitations in our talks. The months that followed were a delicate reconstruction, like rebuilding the finca one beam at a time. Isabella moved in officially. No more sneaking through back gates, no more half-truths. Her family cut her off as promised. No more Sunday dinners, no harvest help from cousins. The orchard next door stood fallow, a silent rebuke. Diego sent letters, pleading at first, then accusatory, but she burned them unread, her jaw set like flint. They'll come around, she'd say, but doubt shadowed her words, a ghost we both felt. We poured ourselves into the land instead. I designed additions to the finca. A studio for her art, sun-drenched and open to the groves. A communal kitchen where neighbors could gather, mending fences with shared meals. She painted, fierce canvases of olive branches entwined with steel chains breaking free. Our love deepened in the doing. Hands callous from digging, evenings spent on the porch with her head in my lap, my fingers combing her hair as cicadas sang the sunset. But betrayal's echo lingered. Nightmares woke us. Me reliving the market confrontation, her thrashing against invisible hands forcing the ring on. We'd make love to chase them away. Slow, reverent, her body arching under mine like a wave cresting. My name a prayer on her lips. It was intimacy reborn, not from lust but from the hard-won knowledge of fragility. I almost lost you, she'd murmur afterward, tracing my collarbone. Never again. The village was slower to forgive. Whispers followed us at market. The runaway bride and her gringa. But cracks appeared in the wall of judgment. Abuela Ruiz defying her sons, slipped notes under the gate. Recipes scrawled in shaky script. Pleas for forgiveness wrapped in almond cookies. Blood is thicker than pride, one read. Isabella wept over it, and we invited her for tea. The old woman arrived frail but fierce, her rosary clicking as she studied us over chamomile. Love like yours, she said, patting Isabella's hand. It's a revolution. Don't let them snuff it. Word spread. Neighbors trickled in. The baker with loaves still warm from the oven, the potter offering tiles for our mosaic floor. Even Diego appeared one dawn, not with anger but exhaustion, a bottle of his homemade anise in hand. I was wrong, he admitted, voice rough. Thought I could forge her into what I needed. But she's always been wilder than that. No apology to me, just a nod man to woman acknowledging the territory we'd claimed. He left with an invitation to the feria, a olive branch extended. The turning point came in spring, when the almond blossoms carpeted the hills in pink snow. Isabella's gallery dream took root. An exhibition in the town hall, her paintings hung alongside local weavers and potters. I curated the space, my architectural eye turning the dusty room into a sanctuary of light and story. The opening night buzzed, tourists mingling with villagers, wine flowing, flamenco guitars strumming soul-deep laments. As the crowd swelled, Isabella took the makeshift stage, her black dress swirling like smoke. She spoke of roots and wings, of loving against the grain. "This land taught me to fight," she said, her voice steady, eyes finding mine across the room. "But Isabel taught me to fly." Applause thundered, but it was her hand in mine afterward, calloused sure, that grounded me. Her father arrived late, hovering at the edges like a storm cloud. When the room emptied, he approached, mustache twitching. "You've shamed us," he rumbled, but his eyes were wet. Isabella stiffened, but I squeezed her hand, our silent pact. Then softer. "But you've made something beautiful. Like your mother would have wanted." He embraced her, brief and bone-crushing, then turned to me. "Take care of her, Yankee, or I'll bury you under the olives." It wasn't absolution, but it was a start. The family mended slowly. Dinners resumed, tentative bridges over chasms. Abuela moved in with us part-time, her stories weaving us tighter. The orchard bloomed again, co-tended by Diego's steady hands and our shared sweat. Through it all, our love evolved. Not the blaze of summer, but the steady hearth of winter. We'd argue still, over paint colors or whose turn to fetch water, but make up with kisses that tasted of forgiveness. On quiet nights we'd walk the hills, her arm looped in mine, the Sierra silhouetted against dawns that promised more. One evening, as harvest moon rose fat and golden, Isabella led me to the cork oak grove, our grove where it had all ignited. She spread the same blanket, now frayed with use, and unpacked a picnic, figs, cheese, the turquoise necklace refashioned into a bracelet. Kneeling, she took my hand. "Isabel," she said, voice thick with emotion, "you turned my hatred to home. Marry me?" Here where it began. Tears blurred the moonlight. This wasn't the hatred of gates and deeds, nor the heartbreak of markets and rings. This was us, flawed, fierce, found. "Yes," I whispered, pulling her up into a kiss that sealed it. Around us the oaks rustled approval, leaves whispering like ancestors at a wedding. We wed in summer, a simple affair in the plaza I'd redesigned. Arches of jasmine, tables groaning with paella and pie, guests from Seattle mingling with Andalusians under strings of lights. Abuela officiated in her way, rosary in hand, blessing us with words older than the hills. Diego stood witness, his smile genuine. As we danced, my clumsy steps in her arms, the village sang, voices rising like a tide. Life settled into rhythms, mornings sketching by the window, her easel nearby. Afternoons in the groves, hands linked over furrows. Evenings on the porch, wine glasses clinking to toasts of to us. The finca thrived. A haven for artists, a hub for the town. My past faded, Claire's ghost exorcised by this new world. But it was the small graces that humanized it all. Isabella's laugh when I burned the tortilla, my sketches of her sleeping form pinned above her studio. Love, I learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the choice daily to rebuild. Years later, as we watched our adopted niece chase fireflies in the yard, Abuela's great-granddaughter, entrusted to us in her final days, I turned to Isabella, her hair silver-threaded now, eyes still gold-flecked fire. "From hatred to this," I said, lacing our fingers. She smiled, that throaty laugh bubbling up. "To home. When you appeared at my door, well, you know the rest." And I did. My heart, once iced over, had melted into rivers of grace. In Spain's embrace, with her beside me, I'd found not just love but belonging. The kind that endures storms, mends betrayals, and turns strangers into soul's kin.